Hello there, welcome to AWS Tech Guide channel. Today, I'll show you how to create VPC endpoints. This tutorial is completely focused on hands-on tutorial, so I will not go deeper into the theoretical concept, but definitely I will give an overall definition what is VPC endpoint and how it works. VPC endpoint actually enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS service. So what does it mean privately connect your VPC? Because you know that AWS resources which is inside your VPC, you can connect them. But which is outside of your VPC like your S3 or DynamoDB, when you need to connect those resources which are actually in AWS public zone, you need to use internet to access those resources. But through VPC endpoint, you can privately connect to those resources as well. VPC endpoint also provides you the ability to connect those services privately without requiring an internet gateway, NAT device, VPN connection or AWS Direct Connect connection. There are two types of VPC endpoints. First one is gateway endpoints and the second one is interface endpoints. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to create a gateway endpoints. As you see in this diagram that we have one VPC with two availability zones and we have few private subnets and one public subnet. And now how we define a subnet as private or public? The subnet which is associated with internet gateway, that is public. So in this diagram, as you see that this green log subnet, which is a public subnet because it is associated with a route table which is linked with internet gateways and it has the access to the internet. Now, what about these private subnets? They have one route table and they are linked with this route table, which is a private route table, but it doesn't have the access to internet. Now, why you need the access from this private subnet to internet? The reason is, what if you are trying to get something from a S3 bucket and S3 DynamoDB SQS, as you see, they are in AWS public zone. They are not actually inside your VPC. So to connect them from your VPC, you have to connect through internet gateways. Now, since the private subnet doesn't have access to internet or it is not linked with internet gateway, it cannot connect it directly. So VPC endpoint is the way to connect to the resources in public zone from a private subnet privately. This architecture actually is the design of a Bastion host, but I am not describing what is Bastion host, but if you already know that this public subnet and the EC2 instance inside this public subnet is acting as a Bastion host, we will be creating the same subnets and VPC in this tutorial. Our main aim in this tutorial is to create one public subnet, two private subnets, and from private subnet connect to a S3 bucket. Now, since private subnet doesn't have access to internet gateway, that's why we will be setting up gateway endpoint. Now, why we are using this public subnet? The reason is we cannot directly log in to this private subnet. So as admin user, I connect from my local system to this EC2 instance which is inside this public subnet. From there I will connect to this EC2 instance which is under private subnet. So again, from private subnet when we will be trying to access S3, it will deny definitely. And I will show you that how it is denying. Then we will create a gateway endpoint, which is this, and we'll link that gateway endpoint to the root table of private subnets, and then we will try to access this S3, which is in AWS private zone, from this EC2 instance, and we'll see how it is connecting. Here I am already logged in into my AWS management console. Now before I proceed, let me tell you that we will be creating that same architecture, not by creating components one after another. I will be using one CloudFormation template. If you want to know how CloudFormation works, how to write a CloudFormation template, you can check my other tutorials. But in this tutorial, I'm just directly using that CloudFormation template, and I will show you where to get that CloudFormation template so you can directly get that template and use it for your own purpose. Now, you can go to our GitHub repository, which is github.com/AWS Tech Guide. Inside that, you will find a repository called script. If you go inside script, you will find AWS folder. Inside that, go to networking, and in networking, you will find one CloudFormation template, basically a JSON file for creating this setup I have just showed you. So now I will be creating a CloudFormation stack. So let's click on service, search CloudFormation, click on create stack. Before creating the stack, let me show you that we will be creating in US East 1, this region, and currently in my EC2 dashboard, there is no instance running. So I have 0 instances over here. So once I execute the CloudFormation template, it will create 3 EC2 instances here with the VPC subnet as I showed in the presentation. Now let's go back to CloudFormation and click on upload a template file. Click on choose file. I'm just selecting this. I have just selected this CloudFormation template. As I showed you that it is available in the Git repository, you can simply download it and use it and click next. Just give a name. Now you have to select the key name over here. Just I'm selecting the key name which I have already, because when it will be creating the instances, it will attach a key pair with that, and you should have that key pair already. Otherwise you will not be able to access those EC2 instances. So click on next, scroll down, click on next, create stack, and now it has started creating the stack. So let's refresh, and it will take 1 or 2 minutes to create the whole stack. And as you see that it has completed the stack creation. Now let me show you each components how it created automatically by this CloudFormation. First, let's go to EC2. As you see that the running instances are now 3. So it has created 3 instances. I am not going through line by line how this CloudFormation template has been created, because that is a separate tutorial. If you already know that how CloudFormation works and how the template is written, then you can understand it very quickly. But even if you don't know that how CloudFormation works, then also you can create the same architecture just by creating one component at a time. So you'll be creating VPC first, then subnet, then you will attach it to availability zones, then you will be creating EC2 instances one after another, 2 EC2 instances in 2 private subnets, 1 in public subnets, and like that. So you can create one by one, or otherwise if you know CloudFormation, you will just run the script and it will create the whole architecture for you in minutes only. But in this architecture, we have not created the gateway endpoints yet, because this tutorial is for gateway endpoints, and I will show you that how step by step you can create gateway endpoint. Well, so first thing is that our EC2.1 and EC2.2, these two are in my private subnet. How do I know these are my private subnet? Because once I clicked on this EC2.2, I can see that the VPC and subnet is linked over here. So if I just open a different tab to click on this VPC, I see that this VPC1 has been created. And this is created by our CloudFormation script. And this VPC has this network ACL and route table attached with it. So if I click on the route table, and if you click on this route table, you'll find that inside routes, there is only one destination, that is target is local. We don't have any internet gateway attached with it. Now let's go back and check public instance, which is named as Bastion host. It is inside our public subnet. So let's click on this subnet. Let's see, and click over this subnet, go to route table, and in this route table you see that there is a internet gateway attached to it. So it is a public route table now, and the instance and the subnet which is associated with public route table, it is a public subnet. And let me copy the private public DNS. So I'm just copying this public DNS, just replacing it over here. Since I have the PEM file already configured, so that's why I'm not configuring it again. So click on save. Now double click on this to connect it, click yes, and it has connected. So it has connected to our public instance, which is in our public subnet. So if I show you that this is our public, so better I just rename it with public EC2. So, and now from here let me ping the internet. So if I try to ping 8.8.8.8, you will get the response because it is in public subnet and internet gateway is attached with it. Now what we will try to do is that we will try to connect private subnet. Now what we will try to do is we will try to connect private instance from this instance. Let me open the architecture once again. As it shows that this green, this public subnet, we are logged in into this instance, this public instance. Now from here we will be try to connect to this EC2 instance, which is inside this private subnet. So let's copy the IP of that private instance. So I'm just trying to connect this EC2 to, that is our private IP. This is our private IP. So I'm just copying this IP and let's connect it. So if I do SSH, now before I try to SSH to the private instance, I need the key pair into this instance, because if I just do LL, I don't have that key pair into this system. I have that key pair already uploaded in one of my S3 bucket, and as you know that this instance has link with the internet gateway, so I will be able to access my S3 buckets from here. So if I try to access my S3 bucket over here, which is AWS S3 LS, it is asking me you can configure the credential by running AWS configure. Well, I have not configured my credential on this instance, that's why it is asking me to run AWS configure. Now let's run AWS configure. It is asking me access key ID. So let me copy my access key ID. It is asking my secret access key ID now. Okay, done. Just click enter and we are done. Now again I am running AWS S3 LS, and before that let me clear this screen, and now I am running AWS S3 LS. And now I am able to list up all the S3 buckets I have. Okay, now let's clear the screen over here. And what was my intention? My intention was to download the key pair into this instance, because if I want to connect to other instance, I will need the key pair here. So I'm just doing a wget. I'm just doing a wget to this URL and just downloading my key pair. Now if I do the list, I see that I have the key pair in this instance now, which is my public instance. Now clearing the screen. Now let's try connecting the private instance. I'm just copying the private IP, doing ssh test.pm. This is our pm file. Yes. Click yes. Well, so it is showing that permission for test.pm are too open. So we have to change the permission. To do that, just do chmod 400 and test.pm. We have changed the permission and now we are trying to connect it again. Perfect. Now it has connected, and it has connected to the private instance. So let me show you again. Now we are connected to this EC22. That is, let me give it a name like private 2. We were in public EC2 and now we are connected to public to this instance. Well, so if I again do exit, so if I type exit and enter, it will log out from the private instance and go back to our public instance. Okay, now let me clear the screen. We are in our public instance now. I am again connecting to private instance. So we are connected to our private instance. Now at this point of time, that private instance is in private subnet and we don't have any internet gateway attached with it. So let's check whether we have the internet access from this private instance or not. So let me ping 8.8.8.8, and as you see, it is actually not pinging. Okay, so it is not able to connect internet. But now we will be trying to access the S3 buckets. Let's see what if we try to access the S3 bucket. So AWS S3 ls, this is the command I am running from private instance. Click enter. It is again asking me to do AWS configure, because we did AWS configure in our public EC2 instance, not this private EC2 instance. So here also you have to do this configure. So AWS configure, click enter, add the access ID, add secret access ID, click, and we are done. Now let's run AWS S3 ls. Before that, let me clear the screen. And as you see, it is actually unable to access those S3 bucket because it is in private subnet and it doesn't have internet gateway access, or basically internet access, because the S3 we are trying to access is actually in the public zone of AWS. And for that, we will be creating VPC endpoints. Now it's the time to create VPC endpoints. So let's go. Go to your AWS console. On the left side, just scroll down and click on this endpoint. Click on create endpoint. Keep this service category as AWS services because we want to access AWS services, which is S3. Now, since we will be accessing S3, now search S3 over here. And we have this service name, which is com.amazon AWS US East 1.S3. That is gateway endpoint type. Now, gateway endpoint always is attached with a VPC. Now, our VPC is actually this VPC 1. So I have just selected this VPC one and it has listed all the root tables over here. Now remember that gateway endpoint gets attached with root table only, and we will be attaching gateway endpoints with private root table only. And how do we know that root table is private? Where we have the private subnet attached means we don't have the internet gateway. So if I just keep my mouse cursor over this associated with link, I see that there are two subnets, and I know by name that A1 and B1 subnet, they are private subnets. So I am just clicking on this private subnet, because in our diagram, as I showed you, let me show you once again. In this architecture, we have two private subnets and one public subnet. So that's why in the root table also, it was showing that this root table basically is attached with two private subnets. So let's go back, and I have selected this root table over here and keep this policy as full access for now and click on create endpoints. So it has just created this endpoint. Okay, now let's go back to our EC2 instance. Click on running instances. Now I'm selecting this private instance. Okay, and select the subnet. It is our private subnet, definitely. What I'm trying to show you, that private subnet root table, how it got associated with the endpoint we have created, means VPC endpoint, gateway endpoint we have created. So I'm just clicking on the root table which is associated with our private subnet, the private root table. Click over there, click on the roots, and you see earlier it had only local as target. Now it has got this new record, which is basically our target is VPC endpoint, which is gateway type endpoint. Well, now let's go back to our command prompt. We are currently in our public instance, so let's connect to our private instance. So I'm just connecting our private instance. Perfect. Now earlier when we tried to connect our S3 or tried to ping internet, it didn't work, right? So let's try to connect internet once again. So I am just trying to connect internet, which is 8.8.8.8, and it is not able to connect internet, which is good, because the reason is you create VPC endpoint to access those resources which are in AWS public zone privately, but that doesn't mean that it will be accessed through internet or from your private instance you will be able to access internet. So definitely it is outside of your internet and you are not exposed into internet. Every traffic inside your VPC. That's the security benefit in your VPC. Now let's try this AWS S3 LS. In this case, now we have created VPC endpoint. So now it should get the S3 buckets listed over here. Click on enter and it has listed. The reason is it is now linked with VPC endpoint, which is gateway endpoint. It is not going through internet, but it is going through gateway endpoint. So that's the benefit of VPC endpoint. It doesn't go through your internet, but all the traffic is actually inside your VPC, and which is private, and it is not at all exposed to the internet. So it gives a security benefit. And once again, if you need that CloudFormation script, please go to github.com/AWS Tech Guide. Inside script repository, I have this networking_vpc.json file already over here, and you will get that file link in the video description. If you have any query or question, please write in the comment box. I'll be happy to help you. See you in our next session.